Welcome to the Simple Idea Podcast. My name is Makai Green, and this is a podcast about personal development and learning experiences. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about social media, and more specifically, quitting social media, which is something that I just recently did about 3 to 4 months ago, I want to say. But I'm really just going to dive right into this one just because it's kind of late and I need to get this episode uploaded. And I am trying to stay consistent because it is only the third episode. But yeah, let me just hop right into this one. So I'll give you a little bit of background on when I first started using social media. And I am 21 years old. So I actually started using social media back in, I want to say, 7th grade, and I was using Facebook. Yeah, I was using Facebook. I wasn't on the MySpace wave like some of the other kids of my generation were using at that time. So I was kind of late to the social media thing that was happening, and I joined Facebook. I joined because my cousin said it, and some of the kids at my school also had it. So I'm like, hey, this seems pretty cool. I can, reach out to people at my school outside of school. So that's kind of what I used it for. And I used it pretty heavily up until, I'd say, about 9th grade. So going into freshman year, and that's when I kind of fell off of Facebook. But yeah, I mean, as a whole, social media from that point until just about October of 2018, I was using social media for about some 7 to 8 years. So it's had a pretty active role in my life for the past 8 years, and I've noticed that ever since I stopped using it. But yeah, what else can I talk about in terms of my early use of social media? I have like different scripts written for each episode, and eventually I'll probably start just winging it a little more. But this is fairly new, so we're just gonna keep going off of the script. But yeah, pretty much I just joined social media just because a lot of my peers were joining, and it was kind of what people were doing. So I don't know if I ever made like a fully conscious decision to join on my own accord, but I did join, and I would say that it was probably largely influenced due to my friendly groups and just different people I knew. Because I'm assuming if the people I interacted with didn't use social media, I probably wouldn't have used it myself. But yeah, and during this whole this 8-year period of social media use up until this past October of 2018, like I was saying, I only ever really enjoyed using Twitter, and if you can consider Reddit social media, I enjoyed using that too. But pretty much every other platform that has ever existed and that I have tried personally, I guess some of the bigger ones like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, I haven't really enjoyed using those. It was more so I felt like a social obligation to have them, just because that's what my peers were using, and that's how people stayed in touch. So I didn't really use it because I found enjoyment out of it. I kind of used it because there was social ties to it, and I'll dive into that a little further later on. But I was actually kind of forced onto Snapchat, and I never, not once have I ever sat there and said, hey, I actually enjoy using this app. To this day, I still don't understand why Snapchat's a thing. I understand its original, the original premise behind Snapchat, but I mean, it's not really its original premise. And on top of that, I don't think there's a point in having an app like that where you just take 10-second photos or photos that last 10 seconds. And I know they have features now where the photos last longer than that, but I don't know. Snapchat still doesn't make sense to me to this day. So yeah, I was kind of forced onto that. I never really used Instagram a whole lot, and Facebook, even though I had it from a young age, I always thought it was kind of boring. And I mean, I used it and it was cool because I could keep in contact with people, but I never really got any personal fulfillment out of it. Kind of just used it just because everybody else was. So what I've noticed over the past 8 years of my social media use is, I would say, more negative than good, but there's definitely some good, but we're going to focus on the negative first because that's what has led me to this social media detox, or me just kind of decluttering my use of social media. Uh, so just right off the bat, social media, it kind of negatively affected my personal relationships with different friend groups or friends or just people that I was talking to, or you know, romantic relationships, stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that happens on social media that can cause just unnecessary tension and drama. And because it's not face to face interaction, there can be a lot of, what's the word? Just a lot of stuff lost in or misinterpreted along the way within different posts or different tweets or just random stuff. It's just stuff is just lost in translation most of the time, and it just causes a bunch of unnecessary drama and tension. And especially during the time when I started using it, which is middle school, going into high school, going into college, that's a time where you're kind of still immature, and you know kids are just not fully mature, and they don't really know how to use these type of tools productively or in a way that isn't harmful. So you kind of feel those effects, especially during that time period, from like ages 12 to, I would even argue, like 25, to be honest, because most people aren't mature by that age either. But more specifically for me, I just noticed a lot of unnecessary tension and drama with different friend groups and just people that I was dating and just stuff like that. And on top of that, that drama or tension could be just stemmed from not liking somebody's photo, or maybe you said something and you had a specific message in mind behind what you were saying, but somebody read that message out of context, and then you get into a back and forth type of thing with them over social media. And then there's, for example, Twitter subtweets, and it's just a lot going on. And it's because it's not a direct form of communication, which can kind of hurt. Same with texting. I'll always say this, and this isn't entirely correlated with social media use, but it kind of is. With texting, most of the time, an argument is far worse through texting as opposed to face-to-face interaction, because you can't read a person's facial expressions, or you can't read, you might read a text a specific way, and that person didn't mean for that text to be read in the way that you kind of perceived it, I guess. So it's the same thing with social media. It's just a lot of information is lost in context, and at, like I said, the age when I was using it, it was kind of just a bad age to be using social media, because we're just not fully mature, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. For the most part, I would say it just made me miserable because of the things that came along with it, just those negative aspects. Early on, you learn to compare yourself to others through social media. You see somebody posting about how awesome their life is or what accomplishments they have and all these other things, and at a certain point in time, you're like, oh, I should be doing this and that with my life, or I should be as successful as this person, or I should be doing all these amazing things because that's what this person is showing on their account, yet I'm not doing those things. And it kind of makes you feel a little miserable, just because you start to draw comparisons to yourself with your peers, and that's not necessarily the best way to go about using social media, where you sit there, you scroll through your feed, and it's just comparisons. You're like, oh, this person's in this country, or this person just invested in this, or this person just became like this successful CEO of a company. Like, it's just a bunch of random stuff, but you kind of make yourself miserable just because you feel like you need to be on a certain level, because that's what other people are putting out there, and that's what they're showing through their lens. But for the most part, it kind of causes issues with others as well, and more often than not, it was a time waster. And granted, for the most part, I pretty much use Twitter heavily, and I would use the other major platforms from time to time too. But I just wasted a lot of time on it, depending on what I had going on. So it wasn't necessarily productive for me to be on those platforms at all, because you get on for 2 seconds, next thing you know, it's 45 minutes later, and you're supposed to be doing something, but you didn't complete whatever task you had to do because you're scrolling through Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, or you're Snapchatting and having 4 or 5 different conversations through all these apps. So Uh, in that regard, it just kind of made me miserable because I feel like I'm just wasting my time comparing myself to others. And then there's just little tiny micro situations that just cause more issues within those apps. And on top of that, um, I kind of felt socially outcasted when using those apps too. And this kind of stems from like a different issue, I guess you could say. But I felt like I had nothing worthwhile to post to begin with, and I just couldn't fully commit to the idea of using these platforms. So I would have Twitter, and like I said, that was my main platform, so I'm going to keep referring to that. But I would have Twitter, for example, and there's nothing that I necessarily wanted to post. I would just kind of post songs or just like random thoughts that I had throughout the day, but it wasn't the norm for Twitter. My posts weren't the norm for Twitter, I would say. Like you would see people, posting funny stuff or people posting stuff about them traveling or just stuff that's meant to be sticky and meant to be spread. And my messages weren't like that. My messages, in my opinion, and people can, differ in their opinion, but my messages were much more thought out. I kind of put some meaning into whatever I was tweeting, and I kind of thought of it as like a little art form. Like I have like this pretty deep thought that I have, so I'm just sharing it. But that's not what normally sticks on Twitter most of the time, and sometimes it is, but it depends on your authority and the type of person you are and your influence on whoever your followers are, and that's a totally different story as well. But for me, my posts weren't considered what would be sticky tweets on Twitter, and Facebook and Instagram never was largely into those at all. So I don't really want to get into those because I just didn't post on either of those all that much because I stopped using Facebook at a certain point in time, and Instagram I never took pictures. But yeah, on top of that, social media, I'm sitting there staring at my screen all the time, and I just felt like a robot. I just felt like I wasn't human because the first thing I would do when I wake up in the morning is stare at my Instagram feed or stare at my Twitter feed or go down Snapchat, keep up with streaks, just stuff like that. That just like that shouldn't be the first thing I'm doing when I wake up in the morning. It just kind of felt. It was overwhelming at times, I guess, and it sounds crazy to say that, but you're just so involved that you don't even realize how involved you are until you take a step back. Like when I'm walking down the street trying to go to class, and I notice myself like in my face is in my phone the entire walk, and I don't know what I saw on the way to my class, and I'm walking half a mile to my class. That's an issue to me, and I didn't like that. So I just felt like I was less human, and I was too involved with these different tools and technologies that we have now. And these tools and technologies are great, but I was just too involved. I just kind of started to feel like I was a robot going through the motions. So I kind of took a dump on just social media there a little bit. It was kind of reserved in my opinion, I guess, but you got the basic premise of what I was trying to say. I'm going to talk about Twitter some more if I haven't talked about it enough already. So, like I said before, social media isn't terrible, and I'm not trying to take a dump on it. I think the concept that that it allows is just amazing. Like it's arguably one of the most important and revolutionary technologies in human history. It allows us to reach people on the opposite side of the globe with just a few clicks on our phone. You know what I mean? Like I would argue it's one of the most important technologies we've ever seen. So, used correctly, it's amazing. It's important. It's the most important piece of communication to date. So I do appreciate it. And I don't want to take a dump on it. And like I said before, Twitter was a platform that I used heavily. And to this day, even though I'm not on Twitter anymore, that's still my favorite platform. Like by far, it's not even close. Because for me, Twitter was a platform where it was just the all-in-one hub for everything that I ever needed. Excuse me. Like I got my news from there, and I would follow news loosely just because I don't like watching the news. Most of the stuff on the news is depressing, but I'd get my news from like on a national level from Twitter. I would get all my entertainment for the day, pretty much. If I just wanted to go on Twitter and be entertained, I was able to be entertained because I would find something on my feed that would just keep my attention, and I just go down a rabbit hole. So I found my entertainment there. Funny tweets, just tweets about just good stories, just random people sharing their experiences. Like, it was just a good place to find those type of things. And on top of that, it allowed me to keep in contact with some of my friends who might go to different schools. Allowed me to network and find other people that I might, have similar interests with. So I met a few graphic designers through there. I met just different artists, things that I find interesting. I met people who also find those same things interesting, and I was able to connect with those people through this app, which is really, really cool. And on top of that, I was able to keep in contact with loose acquaintances from high school or just from playing basketball, just random stuff. But it was my all-in-one app. Like, I got my entertainment, my sports, music, everything. Was able to follow my favorite creators, my favorite influencers, just my favorite authority figures that are out there. And like I said before, it was just this all-in-one app that was just amazing to me. I'm like, to this day, and I do miss Twitter a lot, but for me, at the point that I'm at, I think it's healthy that I am not on social media, because I feel a lot better without it. I feel like I went on a little bit of a rant, but you guys got an idea there. Oh, and on top of that, and I think YouTube is a media-related app. I don't know if it's considered social media because, in my opinion, it kind of lacks a few things, but I guess it is social media. I would also say Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit. Those were the apps that I used heavily before I did a complete purge on anything, or my complete purge on every platform that I was on. So I was on Facebook, Snapchat, all the major big platforms that you guys know about. Excuse me. But out of all those apps that I would use, it would pretty much just be Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit, and that was on a consistent daily basis, anywhere from about 15 minutes to an hour a day, usually somewhere in between, sometimes up to an hour. And that was all well, and it was great, and I had fun on those apps, and I still use YouTube and Reddit just because I don't think it's quite like Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat or any of those other apps. It's a little bit different. I'm just really into video, so I mean, I get my video from there. It's kind of like my main form of entertainment. I don't watch TV, so that's why I still use YouTube. And Reddit is just good for getting different information or just keeping up on different interests. Like, a lot of the hobbies that I'm interested in, there's subreddits for them, so that's why I still have Reddit. But yeah, let me get into why I completely quit. Like I mentioned earlier before, I completely quit every social media platform that I was ever on, with the exception of one, and I'll get into that in just a few minutes. But in October of 2018, I quit, and sorry if the audio is a little distant, I kind of just moved, sorry about that. But yeah, let me get back on track here. As of October 2018, I quit, and right now it is January 4th or 5th, I'm not too sure. So that's roughly 3 to 4 months. That's what I have written down on the script, so I hope I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, primarily the reason why I did it was just because I felt like I was not as human as I should be, and it's very hard to explain it, but I just felt like I was going through the motions. I felt like I was too attached to the technology that I was using, that I wasn't like fully living in this reality that I'm actually in. I was in like a different reality where everything was just tech related and everything was about just the internet and just what platforms I'm on, what content I'm posting, and just all this different stuff kind of just had my head wrapped up in a place that wasn't here on Earth. So I had to take a step back. I really needed to clear my head and just get rid of all this hecticness that was going on within it. And ultimately, I just wanted to feel human again. I wanted to take a step back. I wanted to be able to put my phone down and not worry about, what's going on Twitter, or who's doing what on Instagram, or who's traveling where and what people are accomplishing. I wanted to take a step back and say, hey, what does Makai need to focus on? What do I need to be better at? How am I getting my life together? Because using these platforms and being in my phone all the time isn't necessarily going to help me be the person that I have yet to figure out that I want to be. So that's really where it stems from. And when I quit, I noticed a ton of different things. And spoiler alert, I am extremely happy about my decision to quit. And as of now, I'm not too sure when I'm going to be back on social media. But for as long as this happiness high lasts, I'm not coming back. And I'm happy about it. But yeah, I don't know. I just appreciate the smaller things in life more. And I've noticed that I I don't know. I walk down the street and I'm just happier to interact with people. Like I go out of my way to interact with people. Like I'm more willing to start a conversation because I'm not on my phone. Uh, like I notice the grass is a little greener, or like I feel the wind a little more than I did before. And this sounds absurd, I know, but it's just stuff that I felt since I put my phone down. Like I've left my phone in my pocket. I left my phone at my dorm room. I left my phone wherever I'm not. Pretty much, I just leave it. I just completely forget it. It's like at one point this thing was attached to my body, and now I'm completely disregarding it. Like I want nothing to do with it. It's just because I want to completely disconnect myself from this digital world that we're all a part of. Because in a sense, that world is fake. It's not what we are. It's not who we are. So I wanted to disconnect myself from that, and I wanted to just be a part of this world again. And like I said before, I know it sounds crazy, but this is my lived experience, and this is what I had going on the past few years. Just I had a lot of negativity and just toxicity, and just ultimately not a lot of good things coming from the use of social media, and I felt like it was a must for me to get away from it. But yeah, since then, I'm just more thoughtful in my everyday interactions. I just make sure I'm more kind to people. I make sure I'm more aware, more attentive to what I'm doing. I put more thought into what I'm doing. I read more. I make sure I just do and pay attention to smaller things. And I feel better after doing those things. Like I feel like I can breathe again. My head's clearer. I'm happier. I feel more determined. I feel more focused, which is huge, because social media was something that was kind of sapping the energy out of me, even when I wasn't using it. It was just the knowledge of knowing it was there that kind of put pressure on me. But yeah, like I said before, I'd turn my phone off. I'd leave it at home. I'd walk around campus, and I'd still see people in their phones, facing their phones, just head down, walking down the road, and everybody else is doing it, and I'm the only one looking up, and I'm like, I can truly appreciate what's going on around me. Like I'm aware of this leaf falling on the ground, or I'm able to look up and I can say hi to somebody or smile, which was something I can't remember the last time I've done. And it's scary to say that because I was that involved that I can't remember the last time I smiled at somebody. And like, who's to say that smile doesn't make somebody's day? Or maybe somebody's having a bad day and that smile makes the difference, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't have been able to do that. And it all started from me taking a step back and saying, hey, I need to make sure that I focus on me, and I focus on just being like happier, more positive. And for me to do that, I need to get away from something that's sapping my energy. And it's deeper than that, and I could talk about this for years probably, but I'm just painting a picture of what this social media detox or this like social media purge has done for me. And I would encourage you guys to test it out, because there is a lot of pressure and tension and stress that comes from using these platforms. A lot of it is fake, and I don't mean to sound like a crazy person, because you guys probably know what I'm talking about, but we all put up some type of false image of ourselves on social media. Like we craft a specific image that we want to portray to the rest of the world, and that image isn't truly us. It's just what we want the world to see. And one thing that I promised myself that I would do, and I'm actually doing it with the podcast, is no matter what platform I use, no matter what content I create, no matter what I put out there or put out here for like this digital world that we're all a part of, it'll 100% be me. I won't craft a specific personality or like a specific image. I'm going to give you who I am, like in the very flesh. So you get the good, the bad, the ugly. You just get like an organic, natural me. So if I'm going through something, and I mentioned this in the previous episode, but if I'm going through something, I'm not going to hide it. Like I'll post something on Instagram or Twitter once I have those platforms back again. But I'll post something on whatever platform I'm on. I'll be like, hey, I just failed miserably at this. I tried my hardest, it didn't work, and I also failed at this, but I succeeded at this. And I'm going to give you that because I think it's important that we, although it's two different worlds, this digital world and the reality that we're living in, I think it's important to craft a real image so that people know that it's okay to be themselves, because I feel like we're all competing against each other to put on the best image of ourselves and to outdo the next person next to us. And I don't think it has to be like that. It doesn't have to be a race. And that's what it turned into for me. It turned into a race with a ton of toxicity. It turned into a race with against myself at certain points. It's a whole just cluster of craziness going on. But I feel like you guys have an idea of what I'm talking about. And I am coming up on 30 minutes, so I'm going to kind of rush through these last 2 points that I want to make. But there was one platform that I decided to keep, and I'll explain that now. So I decided to keep Instagram. So as of now, the only place you guys can find me is Instagram. I've been putting my handle in the description of every podcast episode. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at GREENEM as in Michael, EKHI, so Green Mackay. So you can follow me there. I follow back. But the only reason why I kept it was because I want to. One thing that I've never done for my entire life really is take pictures or just capture different moments. So I kept Instagram so I can challenge myself to take pictures because it's something that I want to get into. And right now I'm in the process of getting into more photo and video related work and just more work with content like in relation to video. So I thought Instagram would be a platform to keep, and I'm also starting up on there and YouTube. So it's important to have it just so I can throw those images and just different shots and different pictures that I have up. So it's kind of going to help me build a portfolio, work on different editing techniques, work on different cinematography techniques and whatnot, and just kind of just throw myself out there in the world of video and photo. Try not to rush too much. But yeah, that's why I kept it. It's just really to challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone and do something that I never really did before. I even bought a camera not too long ago. Nothing too crazy, but something just to get me started and to really commit to this, just like I'm committing to this podcast. Weekly episodes, guys, don't forget. But yeah, like I said, I'm also starting YouTube, and this Instagram thing is kind of going hand in hand with that. So that is the only reason why I have it. I don't usually check it throughout the day. I've been pretty good with that. And for the most part, I still don't use my phone. There's times where I just leave my phone at home, or I turn it off completely, or I just put it in airplane mode. But the social media purge and detox that I'm going on has been extremely beneficial. I felt happier, or I've been feeling happier. I've been feeling more fulfilled. I feel like I'm starting to come into myself. And it's only been 3 or 4 months, but it's been a lot that's happened over the course of those 3 or 4 months because of my decision to quit. So if you've thought about it, if you feel stressed from whatever you have going on, or you feel like you're putting on an image that isn't you, and you feel like you're competing against other people, you're comparing yourself, it's just like a lot of negative or toxic energy coming from using these platforms, I do encourage you to take a step back and maybe not delete your accounts. Maybe you want to keep them, but maybe just log out. Maybe delete the app off your phone. Maybe turn your phone off. Maybe do it for a week, do it for 2 weeks, maybe do it for a month, or even 3 or 4 months like I'm doing, and just see what it does to you and see how you feel afterwards. And if you feel like the positives outweigh the negatives in that situation, I encourage you to stick with it, because as of now, it's been working pretty well for me. So I hope it works for you. I'm just sharing some experiences that I've had and something that's worked for me, and just what I have going on. And I feel like this has been a pretty big part of my life now. Like I said, it is only social media, but it's been pretty relevant for most of us since it started. But yeah, I'm gonna close this episode out. It's been a pretty long episode actually, closing in on that half-hour mark. But yeah, as of now, I'm still on the social media break. I don't know when I'm going to end it. I'll probably end it when I see fit, so I don't have a specific time span in mind. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on my progress, the goods, the good parts, the bad parts, the ups and downs, and everything that comes along with this quit or social media quitting process thing that I have going on. I do want to thank you for listening, and I will have another episode out next Friday. New episodes come out every Friday at 12 p.m. noon, and I should have this episode up by tomorrow at noon, like I just said, because today's Thursday. The YouTube channel is still coming together for this podcast, so the content might be a little bit behind or delayed, but it should be up to date at some point. You can find the podcast at all the platforms in the description below, or in the podcast. Like I said before, follow me on Instagram at Green Mackay. Thank you for listening once again, and I'll catch you guys next week. Thank you.